Welcome back to the top 20 weapons in Assassin's Creed Odyssey in 2020. I will show you my full ranking for all the 20 weapons I have picked for this list. I felt there was a real need to make a new list because I strongly disagreed on the lists available in the internet. I've been chatting with a lot of people about this list and we mostly agreed on all of the entries, but it could still be that you would rank one or two items a few positions higher or lower. That's absolutely possible. So please take it still as a personal opinion based on my knowledge. Of course you can have a different one if you want. We will start of course with number 20. The Vine Bow even barely made it into my list, but I have to put it here because I have to bust some myths about it. Many people think that is the best bow in the game, but that is simply not the case. It was actually a relatively decent bow at around level 50. But now elemental damage engravings outperform this by far. We have 40% poison or 40% fire, which will be much better than the 25% here, and also the 30% damage on distant targets is really not a good engraving. That only triggers at 25 to 30 meters distance, so that's basically 2 total losses on the engraving side, and the Vine Bow can be glad that it even got a mention here. Number 19 goes to the Sword of Kings. I had to put it here because a famous YouTuber put this as his number 1 on his list, so I strongly disagree on that one, simply because it has a warrior damage and all damage. How can a weapon with all damage be a good weapon at all, to be honest? It should have either crit damage or damage with swords. If it is a sword, then it would be a good weapon. When we look at the legendary engraving, that's pretty decent, it's okay, you can use it when you have heavy weapons, but with swords that's really not needed at all. I mean, you can use this weapon to unlock the 50% charge reduction to use it with blunts and heavy blades, but other than with heavy weapons you don't need that legendary engraving. Swords are so fast anyway, so having this on a sword is really pointless. Number 18 goes to the Prometheus Sika. That weapon is a bit better one than the Sword of Kings. It has warrior damage, fire damage and another 15% fire damage and build up, so a lot better than 10% all damage here at least. We don't have a useless legendary engraving for swords, instead we get 15% more fire damage and build up, which is fine, not much, but still good. We can also salvage this weapon when we engrave damage with swords on it, but then we have no room for another legendary engraving. It's really sad, but these are the 2 best legendary warrior swords, with warrior engraving as a primary. Nothing good at all on the 2nd or 3rd spot. At least we get some fire damage here for the Prometheus Sika, but Ubisoft has clearly not shown a love with swords here. Number 17 has the 2 best legendary blunts in the game, the Mallet of Everlasting Flame and the Hammer of Jason. The Hammer of Jason especially has very good engravings with warrior damage, damage with heavy blunts, but then again we have shield break. I know some people love to use shield break, but shield break really doesn't deal so much damage. Although if the other stats are really good, shield break is a real loss on that cool weapon here. The Mallet of Everlasting Flame on the other hand has warrior damage, fire damage, and it also unlocks the automatic fire damage conversion, which is really good. I really like this ability. A lot of people also like that one. And when we engrave damage with heavy blunts on the Mallet of Everlasting Flame, it will be almost as good, if not even better than the Hammer of Jason. Number 16 is another tie between the Fanged Bow and the Heitors Bow. Both are very similar, with the Fanged Bow being mainly for assassin players with assassin primary, then poison damage and the automatic poison arrow conversion, and the Heitors Bow with warrior damage, fire damage and the automatic fire arrow conversion. In a traditional hunter build you should either go for poison or fire damage. Every percent of poison or fire damage will also increase your hunter damage. On top of that, you don't have to craft any arrows with these bows and you can still place a legendary engraving of your choice. Number 15 is the Xiphos of Dionysos with assassin damage, critical damage and 20% damage with Hero Strike. Hero Strike is the most used ability for assassin players and that makes it a very well balanced assassin sword. It has assassin damage, critical damage, so basically everything you want to have as an assassin player, but it is still lacking damage with swords, which is a huge setback if you want to use it as warrior as well. Number 14 is the Dagger of Kronus. Many people think that is the best legendary dagger in the game because it has warrior damage and damage with its weapon type, which is really good actually, but then the legendary engraving 40% damage from behind is really rubbish because there's a natural damage multiplier already in the game. When you attack from behind, no matter which weapon you use, you will get the damage multiplier of 1.4 to the damage you deal. You don't need an engraving for that. This legendary engraving does not change your behind multiplier from 1.4 to 1.8, which would be normally what you might think it does. it just adds a small 40% warrior damage on top of the damage you already deal. It is as bad as damage versus Athenians or damage versus Spartans. So this legendary engraving is a total loss, a total fail here on that weapon. And that prevented it from being ranked much higher here on my list. Number 13 goes to the Falx of Olympus. The Falx of Olympus unlocks one of the most powerful engravings in the game, the 100% damage increase but health capped to 25%. But of course this engraving has also its downside. You need a lot of melee resistance or even range and elemental resistance to make good use of it. And it also has not very good engravings. It has assassin damage, which is okay if you want to use more the assassin route, but then it has an adrenaline engraving, so that's at least one total loss here on the engraving side. You can salvage it to a certain degree when you engrave Dagger Spears on it, but you would rather want to use this weapon only to unlock the engraving and place the 100% damage on a more perfect weapon instead. Number 12 goes to the Blade of Yumminess. At the first look it has awesome stats with assassin damage, damage with swords, and when we even engrave critical damage we get a very good assassin weapon and a very good warrior weapon at the same time, and it unlocks a 250% damage increase, but you cannot use abilities. So at first that looks totally awesome, but what does it really mean? Not using abilities means you cannot heal, you cannot deal a lot of damage. So at first you will see insane numbers here on the stat screen, over 100,000 or even over 200,000 damage with the Blade of Yumminess. But that's really pointless because you cannot use your abilities with it. So you will be stuck with 1 or 2 million or 5 million damage with a charged heavy attack at best, and that's it. Whereas other players deal 10 or 15 million damage with their overpower attack. So you have to see the whole picture, not only the big numbers on the inventory screen, you also have to check what you can really do with that weapon. And in that regard, the usability is really questionable. At number 11 we have our first epic weapon entry with the Copycat Sword, which has warrior damage, damage on Spartan soldiers, which is a bit me, but then it has 10% crit chance. Only 2 melee weapons in the game have 10% crit chance on them. So that makes it a really unique, awesome weapon here. And when we engrave damage swords on it, we get a really good sword out of it. Even it does not have a legendary engraving, but it does not need to have that. Because we have 10% crit chance here for free without any negative effects, and that can really help out in a lot of builds. This weapon was the key to make the God Mode Warrior build to 100% crit chance, and it even saves you a lot of crit chance. Even at low level you can make it easy to 100% when you have this weapon. You will get this weapon when you complete the Really Bad Day questline from the Lost Tales of Greece in Locris. We are entering the top 10 with the Atlantean Blade. Probably the best legendary dagger in the game with hunter damage, critical damage and armor penetration. It unlocks the armor penetration, which is an incredible engraving. It really amplifies your damage by the same factor than the Falx of Olympus does, but it does not have any negative effects like 25% health cap, so you get the same amount of damage increase without any negative effects for Hunter and Warrior. Hunter players can use this weapon to place armor penetration and the 100% damage increase on the same weapon, which makes it incredibly strong. But even if you don't want to use this weapon in your build, you have to get the armor penetration engraving. Armor penetration is the number 1 must-have engraving in any kind of build. Only if you want to go pure assassin, then you may not need it, but as soon as you want to go a tiny bit for warrior, then go and get this engraving into your build. Our number 9 is one of the 2 blue items here in the list, the Minotaur Mace. So why do we have blue items here in the best weapons? Because they are the best weapons. It has assassin damage, 100% crit damage at full health. The only weapon in the game that has 100% crit damage at full health engraved on it. You can only find it from the fake Minotaur questline in Pevka. And when you engrave another 50% critical damage on it, you get a melee weapon with 150% crit damage on it. Do I have to say more? This is a well-deserved place number 9 for the Minotaur Mace. If you place this in any kind of assassin build, it will really enhance your damage. More crit damage and more assassin damage is everything assassin players need. When you have 2 of those beasts, then you can deal up to 18 million damage or even 50 million damage on Polemarchs with the Ares Madness ability. That is absolutely crazy. You can one-shot the Cyclops or even other creatures in no time. absolutely brutal, really well deserved number 9. Number 8 goes to the Oaken Bow of Chambers with hunter damage, headshot damage and critical damage. Normally you cannot have critical damage on a bow, and this is one of the few exceptions in the game. And it is actually one of the most useful ones here because it has hunter and headshot damage as well. So that is really one of the most perfect bows you can use as a hunter, as long as you want a traditional hunter build here at least. The Oaken Bow of Chambers can be found in the Tomb of the Daughters of Atlas in Arcadia. Weapon number 7 is the Achilles Bow with hunter damage, critical chance and 20% with devastating shot ability. That bow is actually outclassing the Oaken Bow of Chambers when you only want to use devastating shots. Of course, the Oaken Bow of Chambers has crit damage and headshot damage, it is really powerful, but the 20% on devastating shots make up the whole gap between the Oaken Bow of Chambers and the Achilles Bow, and you can actually deal more damage with the devastating shot when you use the Achilles Bow. And on top of that, it also has 10% crit chance already, so you can freely engrave another legendary engraving on it, and it also has a slightly higher base damage. All this gives the Achilles Bow a tiny lead over the Oaken Bow of Chambers and makes it the best traditional hunter bow in the game. Item number 6 is the Harvester of Time, which was available in the Chronos pack and also when you bought the deluxe edition of the game. This is a perfect warrior spear with warrior damage, damage spares and critical damage. So that is one of the perfect weapons you want to go for when you make epic builds, but of course you can also use it when you make a legendary build. So use it and you will be fine when you make a spear build in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You cannot get better stats than on this weapon when you want to use a spear. Weapon number 5 is the Bandit Bow with assassin damage, critical chance and critical damage. The other epic bow in the game which has crit damage on it. Sadly it can only be obtained from the Olympian gift, so not many players have this item, but when you have it then you own the best bow for assassin and warrior players when you want to use a traditional bow. Weapon number 4 is Heitors Harpe with warrior damage, critical damage and damage swords. This is a perfect sword with perfect stats when you want to make a sword build. Normally you can only get these swords from blacksmith, but when you do the friend in need quest in Attica and lie to Heitor, then you can keep this sword for yourself. In general, swords are the most versatile weapon in the game, so I placed it here on number 4. Of course, if you want to play with spears instead, then you can exchange the position with the Harvester of Time instead. Then the Harvester of Time would be your preferred weapon on number 4 here. Now we are in the top 3, and number 3 goes to the Spartan Javelin with assassin damage, damage spares and melee resistance. The only weapon in the game that has melee resistance, and we can use it to get to 100% melee resistance in any kind of build. Of course it is best to use in a spear build, but melee resistance can also be acquired in a sword or dagger build or whatever weapon you prefer. That is by far one of the most powerful and most used weapons on all the builds here on my channel. In any kind of resistance build, this is almost a must-have item. You can get the Spartan Javelin when you follow Taleta's questline on the island of Mykonos, and then he will get you a quest where you have to kill 3 Athenian commanders. Do not spare the last one on Delos, kill the last one as well, and you can collect the Spartan Javelin from him. Place number 2 goes to the Isu Spears from the Atlantis DLC, the perfect spears you can get, which includes a damage conversion which totally breaks the game and totally changed everything when we make our builds. You can get one of 3 different versions here, either a hunter version with hunter damage conversion, a warrior version with warrior damage conversion, or an assassin version with assassin damage conversion. I would prefer the assassin damage conversion because you can make one of the coolest builds in the entire game with it, but also the other versions are really powerful. They also have damage spares, so there's really nothing you can complain about these weapons other than they are spares. You can just use the engraving, place it on any weapon you want, and then you are fine. You can make really cool hybrid builds, convert 50% of your damage type to all the other 2 damage types that make incredible hybrid builds really easy to make. And by far the best item in the game is the Bighorn Bow, because it is a glitched item that adds all its DPS to our left melee weapon. When we equip the Bighorn Bow, we increase our warrior damage from 80,000 to be 125,000 when we reload the screen. And it also sets this value as our new hunter damage, even if the game does not directly show it. So you can literally have 6 times the amount of hunter damage with this weapon and 1.6 times the amount of warrior damage. That is better than anything we have here in the list. It is better than the Blade of Yumminess. You can still use all your abilities. It is simply the most powerful and best item in the game. You will see its effect even on lower levels. It always amplifies your damage by a factor of 1.6, so when you deal 10,000 damage you will get 16,000, if you get 100,000 you get 160,000. It's always the same factor and you will really see it. The more damage you deal, the more damage you will get. When you deal 10 million damage you will get 16 million. That is so incredible about this weapon. You can also make incredible hybrid builds with this weapon. In general, every warrior build will also be suddenly the best hunter build you can have in this game, because all your warrior damage will be transferred to be hunter damage as well, which is absolutely insane. So get this weapon if you can, then you really own the best weapon in the game, by far. There are also 2 distinct videos about the Bighorn Bow glitch, so if you want to know more about it, then check out the Bighorn Bow glitch videos. There's everything explained and there are a lot of builds already based on the Bighorn Bow. Check them out, they are the best builds you can make in this game. They use the Bighorn Bow to amplify your damage by a huge amount and they are better than everything else. I hope you enjoyed the best weapons list. It is still an opinion based list after all. You may rank one or the other weapon a little bit higher or lower yourselves. That's up to you, of course. You can have a different opinion and that's fine. If you have any questions, then join our Discord. There are a lot of cool people to help you out, and don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.